So let me go through the question. Please paste the example and then the code. See the problem, I do not have any problem with posting the code. If I post the code, you will just think only in that way of writing it. For any scenario you take, there are multiple ways of implementing it. I will give you all the examples which I did last week. I will do the same, and then maybe after a week I will post all the answers at once. In that way you can work on it, practice it, and then compare with the actual solution. I believe that is ideal, rather than if you know the solution yourself, then I don't think it helps you on the learning curve. Can you send us to trigger code? I can send it, but I don't really want to send. I will give you the examples, and after a week I will post all the code snippets into the group at once. How do we debug the program? I want to see what value the variable holds in debugging things. Okay, Manjula, I'll cover this in the next example. I'll show that. Okay, do we really need to hold multiple accounts? Yes, we need to hold multiple accounts. Map requires ID and an object. We declared a map using software. Can you explain how it will store key and data while fetching data from software? Okay, fine. I will share my screen to answer that. So we have something like this: list of account, select ID comma name from account. Okay, now I have one list with me, and this list is holding some account records. Now what I want to do is I want to create one map like this. Map is equal to new map of ID comma account. My requirement is that rather than using a list, I want to use a map here. Rather than using a list, I want to use a map here. So let's assume that I do not know the process of converting this into map. So what I will do, I will ideally go in the traditional approach of iterating through this lstacc, and then I will say map acc.put objacc.id comma objacc. This is what I will be doing if I do not know the process of conversion. Do you have any questions on this code snippet written? Let me open the chat. Do you have any questions on this code written? It is clear. Okay, fine. Now what I am thinking is, rather than writing one for loop, I wanted to know, is there a way to convert a list into a map? What am I trying to do here? I'm just trying to iterate through this list, and then I am populating my map. What I am feeling is, if there is a way where I can directly convert a list into a map, it will be easy for me. So for that, I googled and I found that there is one way. That is nothing but, when you are initializing a map, you just place the list name. That's it. If you place the list name, immediately system will do the conversion. System will do that for loop. System will do that execution, and system will create this map for you. You don't really have to explicitly write a for loop. Now what I'm feeling is, okay, fine, I am creating one list variable, and this list variable, if I give to the map is holding the corresponding thing. Now why should I create one more variable? Rather than creating this variable, what if I directly put this like this? Then even then the system is quite smart enough to do the things for you. So what am I trying to do here is, I am just trying to give this map a list of s object. With the received list of s object, system is preparing map of id comma s object. This is completely imperative and internal, done by Salesforce. I'm not actually trying to write unnecessary lines of code. I'm making it clear for me and also for the system to do the job. Okay, will you do trigger handler and recursive trigger? Yes, that will be my next example. Please explain once again when to use old and old map. Okay, fine. See, you can use at any time you want. It depends purely on your requirement. When I say requirement, first identify the events. For that specific event, what is the context variable available to you? Ideally, you will iterate through list only. No one will try to iterate this. No one will try to iterate using maps. It's not that you can't do it, but you are taking a fruit. You can iterate by using either trigger.new or trigger.old. Now you have to understand, when should I use trigger.new and when should I use trigger.old? If your trigger is on delete, there is no other option for you. You have to iterate through trigger.old only. There is no other way. But if it is insert, you have to iterate through trigger.new only. There is no other way, because trigger.old is not available for insertion. Trigger.new is not available for deletion. Now the concept comes, now the dilemma comes only for update scenario, because for update you have new available and you have old available. You can iterate through old record and then compare it with new record, or you can iterate through new record and compare the value with old record. Anything can be done, but usually people always tend to make use of trigger.new. Reason being, update will be used in combination with insert. As update is being used in combination with insert, trigger.new is the common context variable available, due to which people tend to iterate through trigger.new and then make use of trigger.old map to get the variables. Old maps will help you to get the old values. Old map will help you to get the old values. Old will be holding the list of records. So my recommendation or my approach is, I will use trigger.new to iterate if it is insert or update or undelete. I will use trigger.new to iterate if it is insert or update or undelete. I will use trigger.old only if it is delete. And then while comparing a value, I will compare trigger.old map with trigger.new. Did that answer your question? Can I consider these examples as real time used in a project? These examples, these are kind of basic examples. I don't think this can be really used. My recommendation to you is, in Trailhead, whatever you have implemented by using process builder, whatever you have implemented by using a workflow, implement them in Trigger, and maybe you can use them as an example. And if at all your question was asked to you stating that if this can be achieved by using workflow process builder, why did you incline towards Trigger, means you can give an answer stating that this trigger was written long back when they are not in place. Next, is map set a list to hold memory in the system, and how can they be released once code is executed? Upon we don't actually worry about releasing the memories. That is one advantage that we have over here, because everything is being present in the cloud itself. We have something called as heap size. And as part of the governor limit, if we are exceeding it, then it is a problem for us. Once the transaction is done, everything will be released automatically. We don't explicitly have to release it like how we do in other programming languages. We don't have to do it. Can we use debug statement inside trigger? Yes, debug statement can be used anywhere in your Apex. There is no such restriction. Is try catch recommended in Apex triggers? Okay, fine. If you feel that there is,
sorry sir, hello.
Yeah, tell me.
Sir, will you explain trigger handler or recursive trigger?
Yes, that is my next example. I will do that. Okay. Is try catch recommended in trigger or Apex classes? Try catch is recommended anywhere and elsewhere. If you feel that there is a chance for some exception to occur, go for try catch. Just one simple question: can we perform DML using map, update map, or update map dot values? Okay. Before I answer that, I want you to answer this for me. Can you perform DML on this map STR? Kushal Patel, this is for you. Can you update DML on map STR? Okay, you cannot actually do any DML on map STR. DMLs will be done only on S objects. DMLs will be done only on S object. It is a string and it is a string. Why will you try to do DML on a string? So it has to be S object for you. And where do you have S object? When you speak about a map, you have S object at the key level or at the value level. You have S object explicitly at the value level. When you say update map STR, system will understand this is not even an S object, and why should I do DML? So system will not understand that. So you have to do DML only on S object, and S object is available only at the values, due to which we will put something like this. DMLs can be done only on the records. When I say record belongs to some object. Object is nothing but S object. I mean, generic term is S object for you. And in a map, you can have S object only at the value place, due to which only this is available. But if someone asks you a question, can I say update map or can I say update map dot values, means both are incorrect. It depends on what the map is all about. If the map is something like this, map of string comma integer, then even update is invalid here. This update statement holds valid only if the value is of type S object. So without specifying what your map is all about, no one can give you a commitment stating that this is valid. It depends on what your map is all about. If your map value is of type S object, only then this sounds valid. Else, if it is something like this, then this is invalid. So first understand what is the map, what is the key, what is the value. Okay, if you have value as a subject, then we can do it right. Yes, it is allowed. If you have value as a subject, then yes, update map dot values is correct. From where to practice trigger scenarios is the first time I'm learning triggers. Okay. From where to practice triggers, I feel that Trailhead, yes, it is a very good place for anyone to get started. That is for sure. Once you are done with Trailhead, what you can do is, as I said earlier, try to migrate the workforce process builders and flows, what all you have worked into triggers. That will be actually very good for you to, go deep and understand how a trigger can be leveraged to some good extent. But to get started, use Trailhead. But if you just complete the scenarios that are written in Trailhead, that will not really give you enough confidence. So always, remember that the more you code, the more you learn. That is the quotation here. So try to migrate whatever you have written in workflow into trigger, though it is not really needed, but that will help you to gain confidence. That will help on your coding skills, on improvement of your coding skills. So try to migrate your workflows into triggers, migrate your process builders into triggers, flows into your triggers. Do not do this in real-time project. Do this for your understanding and for your practice. Okay, I think we will cover a few more questions at the end of the session anyways. So I will go to my next example. Can you provide answer of the question? Sorry, what was your question? Prashant, I did not receive your question. I just see a message. Can you provide answer of this question? Which file you provide? I will send this particular file where I have all these examples written. And after a week, I will provide all the answers. Okay, let's go into the second scenario. This is kind of complicated scenario, and with this example, with the next two examples, you will understand the reason behind having one trigger per object and how we can actually make use of trigger handlers and to avoid recursion. All that will be covered with the coming example. So hold on for that. First, let us see this example. Have a checkbox field. This is how your real-time requirements will be. Okay, so now I want you people to answer by replying so that I will be able to relate to. Have a checkbox field by name premium on both account and contact. Okay, first let us do this. This is the first step. Have a checkbox field by name premium on both account and contact. Fine, I'm doing that right away. Checkbox premium. Next, visible. Next, save. And also let me do the same for contact as well. I'm doing it that quickly. Contact fields checkbox. Next, premium. Next, save. Okay, nice. First step is done. Then the premium checkbox on contact should always hold the same as accounts. Okay, fine. I will elaborate this. If there is an account by name Google and it is marked as premium, then any contact that is present under Google, is premium for me. So the premium checkbox should get checked. If there is a contact by name, let's say Salesforce, there is an account by name Salesforce, which is premium, that any contact under this is premium for me. If there is an account, let's say, I'm just making up some name. So let's say there is an account by name DB, which is not premium. Then any contact under this will be not premium. The moment you mark from premium to non-premium, all contacts will become non-premium. The moment you mark an account from non-premium to premium, all contacts will become premium. So this is the requirement. Now you tell me on which object do I have to write my trigger. Like if I open a contact, I should be immediately able to see if the account is premium or not. So in which object do I have to write my trigger on? Will this be on account or will this be on contact? Okay. Contact object, account object, account object. Okay, fine. Now I will go with the answer that it is contact for now. Okay, I will tell you the reason. And I see no one gave correct answer. Fine. Now I'm going with contact. I will tell you the reason why I went for contact. Okay, fine. So I will write one trigger on my contact object for insert. There is an account by name Salesforce. I have my premium as true for this. I have inserted a contact by name Mark Benioff. Because I have written my trigger on the contact object, immediately my trigger will fire and it will make it as true. Okay, fine, absolutely fine. Now for this account record, I am modifying the premium from true to false. Will the contact record be updated? If at all this is the implementation that I am taking, will the contact record be updated? You modified your account record from premium true to false. Your trigger is on contact and your event is insert. Now will the contact record change from true to false? It will not, because your trigger is only on contact. So DML should happen on contact, due to which it will not work. Now I will take one more scenario of account. Some people told me the answer as account. Okay, fine. When you update, you are trying to have it as update. I have created an account like this, and then I am trying to create a contact. Now it is a brand new contract that I am trying to create. Now why will premium come? For the premium to come, I need to do some DML on account, but I'm not doing any DML on account now. Account record is already present. Now I'm trying to insert a new contact. At the time of insertion of a new contact, nothing is happening for me because there is no trigger written on contact object. So due to which the answer is both. You need to have your trigger written on both account and contact, because when you insert a new contact, yes, it should take the value from account. When you update an account, it should update all the related associated contacts. So the answer is both, not just account or contact. Any questions on why both? Just send me why. I will explain it again. If anyone is having a question on why I have to take both. Why? Okay, fine. I am assuming that everyone is clear on the requirement here, that whenever I open a contract, we will be able to determine that if the account is premium or not. Correct? Now I am taking an example of account. You have just inserted an account. You have just inserted an account by name IBM. No, let's not take IBM. Let's take Salesforce only. You have inserted a account by name Salesforce, and then you are marking the premium as true. At this point of time, will your trigger fire? No, because your trigger fires only at the time of update and your trigger object is on account. Okay, so your trigger did not fire. Now you have inserted a contact and you have given name as Mark. At this point of time, will your trigger fire? Your trigger will not fire. And for premium, you give the default value as false. For premium, you give the default value as false. So due to which it will stay as false. Your trigger is written only on the account object and the event is purely update. So for this record to get updated, you have to go and explicitly make a change to the account record for the change to happen on the contact records. So the requirement includes, if contact is created, it should take from the value from account. Yes, no matter what. I'm not really speaking from technical point of view. It is purely a functional requirement. The premium checkbox on contact should always hold the same as accounts. That is what the requirement is. It is nowhere mentioned that it should happen only at the time of insertion or only at the time of updation. We as a developer, we as a coder should think about the events that are to be taken into consideration. And when I look into this specific requirement, I understood that if you write a trigger on account object, that will work only when the DML happens on account. If you trigger on contact. So now our requirement speaks from both sides. It should work when you try to update an account, and it should also work when you try to insert a contact. So for both of the things to happen, you need to write two triggers on both of the objects. One trigger should be on account, speak about updations. Another trigger should be on contact to speak about insertions, due to which you will end up writing two triggers for one specific scenario. Any questions still? Okay, I am assuming that it is clear. Fine. Now first let us get started with the contact trigger. I will first go with the contact trigger. Can everyone go on mute, please? Update premium. Then I am choosing contact. Submit. Okay. Now what should be the event? Whenever a contact is inserted, it should just blindly take the value from its account. So simple. Premium is present on the contact only, and I don't have to wait for the record to get saved. As I don't have to wait for the record to get saved, I'm using before insert. For before insert, what is the context variable available? Trigger.new. So for contact obj con trigger.new. Okay, fine. Now what should this obj con hold? For this obj con, I have a field called premium, and this should hold me the associated accounts premium. But unfortunately, I cannot make use of this because account.premium is not available in trigger.new. As account.premium is not available in trigger.new, I have to end up writing a SQL query. Now, how can I write a SQL query? I will just say account obj acc is equal to select id comma premium double underscore c from account where id is equal to obj con dot account id, obj con dot account id, and here I will say something like this, and I don't have to do any dml now because it is in the before context. But what did we miss here? We missed to remove the SQL query inside for loop. We should not have our SQL queries inside for loop. We should always have them outside the for loop. Now how can we avoid it? First let us capture the account ids. If you give me the account id, I will give you the account. So what is the corresponding collection variable that can do this job for us? Map. So map of id comma account, map of id comma account, map acc is equal to new map of id comma account. Then what should we do? First let us capture all the account ids. For capturing all the account ids, we need to have something called as set. So set acc ids is equal to new set of id. Now let us capture all the account ids. So set acc ids dot add obj con dot account id. Then what we will be doing? We will be populating this map. So I'm coming over here and then writing the same SQL query, but this time rather than looking for individual record, I'm using in operator and I'm making use of this collection. I am doing the same similar examples again and again so that you will be able to understand. Then what should I do here? To this premium, I just want to give its associated accounts premium value. Map acc dot get obj con dot account id. So to this map, I am giving the account ID of the contact, and if I give the account ID, that will give me the account record, and from the account record, I am just picking only the premium. So in this way, I eliminated my SQL query inside a for loop. How did I eliminate? By making use of one set variable to hold all the account IDs, and by making use of this set variable, I am trying to prepare a map here. So this is how I did it. Now let us quickly test this if this is working as expected or not. So for this account, there are no contacts, and what I will do is I will mark this account as premium and I will create one contact just to see if it is working fine or not. I have this premium field. I am checking this. Now let me quickly create one contact for this. New contact. Clicking on save. I left the premium as unchecked. Now if I see premium got checked, why did the premium got checked? Because we have our trigger on the contact object, which states that whenever the premium on account is, while creation of a contact, take the value whatever is there on its parent. If the parent is checked, then immediately check it. If the parent is unchecked, then leave it unchecked. So this is the trigger that we have written on the contact for insertion. Now we have an account and we also have a contact. Now what I will do is I will go to my account and I quickly uncheck this. Now this account is no longer premium for me. So I'm unchecking this and I'm clicking on save. Now if I come to the contact, it is still holding the checkbox as true because you made the change on your account and there is no such trigger written on your account to update the contact. So that is the reason why I told that we need to have trigger written on two objects, one on contact and one on account. So let us quickly write one more trigger on the account object now. Now this time you tell me what is the event that I have to make use of on the account object. What is the event that should be made use? Okay, after update. Why after update and why not before update? Okay, before update came, after update came. Okay, fine. Let us take a step back into the requirement. Whenever account is changed, we are trying to update the contact. Correct. Whenever account is changed, we are trying to update the contact. Now again, let's go back into this example. Let's look at this example. You are trying to do something on the account. Okay, fine. So as you're trying to make some modification on the account, you made some modification on the account. System validation rules came. Before triggers came. In the before triggers, you're trying to do something on the contact. System validation rules came. Before triggers came. Custom validation rules came. Workflows, save happened. After triggers happened. And then workflow rules happened. Okay, fine, everything happened. Then it is coming here. Then there is a custom validation rule which is telling that this account is invalid. Now everything has to be rolled back, right? Why do you want the system to perform something unnecessarily? Wait for the record to get saved and then perform something on the related record. Always remember that if you are trying to perform something on the related record, always go for after. That is the best way. Does it mean that it cannot be done in before? It can be done in before, but why do you really want the system to spend a lot of resources without even knowing that the record is valid or not? So due to which I am inclined towards making use of after update here. Okay, does it mean that all the time my contact should get updated? No, my contact should not get updated all the time. Contact should get updated only if the value of this specific checkbox is changed. Okay, fine. So how will we know if the checkbox got changed or not? By making use of old map, because in update I have my old map available. So trigger.new, then I have my if condition obj acc dot premium double underscore c not is equal to trigger dot old map dot get obj acc dot id dot premium. So what are we just trying to do here? We are just ensuring that the premium value got changed. The premium checkbox got changed. Then what should happen? If the premium got changed, then what should we do? We should update all the associated contacts. Okay, fine. Let us get all the contacts. List of contact lst con is equal to select id comma premium double underscore c from contact, because there is no way for you to get the contacts. There is no field on account which will tell you the related contact. So you have to end up writing a SQL query from contact where account id is equal to objacc dot id, and then what we will be doing, we will be iterating through this because there are multiple records. lst con con dot premium double underscore c is equal to objacc dot premium double underscore c, and then what are you trying to do? You are telling to tell update con. Now if you see, there are many mistakes written. One, we have one SQL query written, and then we have written one DML statement written. Okay, fine. Why do you have to write the update statement over here? Why can't you just say you are anyways creating a list? So why can't you just update the list directly over here? You can ask me. Yes, even this can be done, but still even this list is also written inside the for loop only. Okay, fine. Now we know the process of eliminating DML. So list of lst contacts is equal to new list of contact lst contacts dot add con. Then what are we doing? Outside the for loop, we are update lst contacts. So in this way we are eliminating the DML inside a for loop. But what about the SQL query? I want to get all the child records. How can I actually get all my child records? Okay, now first let us understand, do you want to get all the contacts present in your system, or is there any criteria for you? There is a criteria. What is that criteria? I want to get the contacts of the records. I want to get contacts of the accounts that are being updated. I want to get contacts of the accounts that are being updated. Okay, can you give me the variable, or can you give me a collection that will tell me for which accounts do you need contacts? Yes, I can do that. Okay, fine, then give me that variable. Fine, let me create one variable to hold the account IDs. Set AC's IDs is equal to new set of ID. So what am I doing here? I am trying to capture, let me remove this code for now. I am trying to capture the account IDs. I am trying to capture just the account IDs so that I will be able to get all my related contacts. I will be able to get all my related contacts. Okay, fine. This is the set. Now I am giving you this set of account IDs. With those account IDs, get me all their associated contacts. Okay, fine. I will get all the associated contacts. List of contact LST con is equal to select ID comma premium double underscore C from contact where account ID in set ACC IDs. Okay, fine. Now this brought all the contacts for us. Now what should we do? We have to iterate through this list and then we have to update them. Okay, fine. For contact con con dot premium double underscore C is equal to accounts premium is what I have to give. Now how will I get to know the accounts premium? At this point of time, you have to be quite smart enough to understand that when you're writing a SQL query on the child object, you will be having the flexibility to fetch its parent fields as well. You can do this. Because you're writing a SQL query, you're actually trying to fetch the record on the self object and you're also trying to fetch a field from its parent record as well. So now when you say con dot account dot premium double underscore C, this will work just fine for you. What did we do now? We made it even more simpler. Earlier, we are creating maps to avoid SQL query inside for loop. Now we don't even have to create a map. Okay. Now you can ask me, then why should I create a map and when should I not create a map? Fine. There is no such blind rule that you have to go with map or you do not have to go with map. When you are trying to deal with child records, you can write a SQL query on the child record to fetch their parents as well. It is so easy. So due to which, when you're trying to perform something on the child, you don't need a map. Okay. I know, Aditya, that I can write a SQL query on my parent that can get me child records. And okay, fine. Let me take a step back and let me explain you this trigger example, and then maybe I will be able to help you when should we go for map and when should we not go for map. Now we know the account IDs. We know the account IDs for which the premium checkbox got changed. We got the account IDs for which the premium checkbox got changed. Okay, fine. Premium checkbox got changed, so we captured them. Now what should we do? We need to get all their associated contacts. Okay, we got their associated contacts. Now while fetching for the associated contacts, what are we trying to do? Okay, for each contact, there will be one associated account. From the associated account, we can also get the premium because we have a flexibility. If you are writing a SQL query on the child object, you can also get your parent fields because there will be only one parent. You can use the field name and you can get your parent fields. So by using the parent field, by using the field on the parent object, which can be fetched by writing your SQL query on the child object, I am able to do this without making use of a map. Now the question is, for the examples which we have seen earlier, we have always made use of a map. Why did we made use of a map in those scenarios and why did we not make use of map in this specific scenario? Even in this specific scenario, we can create a map and we can get the job done. But the thing that you have to understand here is, why do you need a map? We need a map. If you give me something, I will give you something. Only in those specific scenarios, you have to use a map. Now look at this specific example. In this specific example, your trigger is on contact object. If your trigger is on contact object, where should you write your SQL query? You will be writing your SQL query on some object other than contact, because on contact you have access to every field because trigger.me is giving you that. So you're writing SQL query on some other object other than contact. In that specific scenarios, we will be making use of map. But whereas here, your SQL query, fine. Let's not confuse. Let me not confuse you with this specific example. I will come back to this with a good relevant scenario. But for now, let us understand that map is not needed all the time. To avoid SQL query inside a for loop, map is needed all the time. Map is needed sometimes, and even without map also, you can still get the job done. Even without map also, you can still get the job done. But it depends purely on the requirement, on which object you are trying to deal and what operations are you trying to perform. So based on that, we will be able to determine if a map has to be used or it can be done without using a map. But the blind rule here is, it is not allowed. I mean, it's not allowed means it is not a good practice to have DMLs or SQL queries inside a for loop. So you can eliminate a for loop. You can eliminate a DML inside a for loop by making use of one collection variable. If you have one collection variable, then yes, you can eliminate a DML inside a for loop. Second thing, does it mean that always I have to create a list variable to avoid DMLs inside for loop? It depends. If you are in before context, why do you need a list variable at all? Why will you perform a DML at all? If at all you are performing a DML, make sure that it is not inside for loop. How can you perform DML? By eliminating it inside for loop means by creating a list variable, obviously. Okay, that is one side. Second side, how can I avoid a SQL query? Again, go with some collections. Okay, what are those collections that can help me to avoid SQL query inside for loop means there is no concrete answer. It could be a list. If you see, we are making use of a list here, or it could be a map in combination with a set, or it could be just a set that we can never guarantee on. But the bottom line here is avoid SQL queries inside a for loop. Okay, I will explain the requirement and the implementation that was done here now. First, we have written our trigger on the contact object stating that whenever a contact is inserted, blindly take the value from its parent account premium field. So for that, we have a map created, and from the map, we are getting the premium value. Now, on the account object, we have a trigger written on update stating that whenever an account record premium value has been changed, immediately get all its associated child records and update them. So this is what we just did. Now I will see if this is working fine or not. So let me make this checked, and let me uncheck this so that I can quickly go to the contact and see if it got modified or not. See, it got modified. Premium has been unchecked now. So what did we do? We just identified the scenarios and then the object. So we know that objects are account and contact, and for account we need to work for update, and for contact we need to work for insert. As for contact, we are doing the insert and the DML is on the same thing. We went for before insert, but for account we are trying to update its associated contacts, due to which we went for after update. And then what did we do? Once we went for after update, we identified all the account IDs for which the contacts are to be updated. With the account IDs, we queried for all the contacts, and then we did a DML. For contact, what did we do? We identified the account IDs. With those account IDs, we queried for all those accounts. With the values present on the accounts, we updated the corresponding contacts. So that is what we did as part of this specific example. If you look into the code, it is so simple. We just tried to identify the account IDs. With the account IDs fetched, we we wrote a SQL query and prepared a map. With the map, we are updating the contact. We are manipulating the contact. But if you look at account, we are trying to query for all the corresponding child records, and then we are trying to update them. So this is about this example. Now let's go for the next example. Number of employees on account to be updated as 15 if not populated. Okay. Number of employees on account to be updated as 15. Number of employees on account to be updated as 15 if not populated. And what is the condition? If annual revenue is 15,000. Okay, fine. Let us put it like this. If not populated, and if annual revenue is 15,000 and only insert. Okay. Now let us understand what is the event that we have to make use of here. Okay, the requirement itself is telling that it should be insert. Okay, fine. We will go for insert. Should it be before insert or after insert? The field that we are dealing is on account only, and we are just trying to update something on account only. So it's so clear that we can go for before insert. Okay, fine. Apex trigger, number of employees before insert. Okay, fine. What is the context variable that is available for before insert? Trigger.new. Account objacc trigger.new. Then what is the requirement? Updated as 15 if not populated. If number of employees are not populated, then this should be 15. Okay, fine. First, let us see if number of employees are populated or not. If objacc dot number of employees is of type integer, so due to which I will say not equal to null. And then if annual revenue is greater than 15,000, okay, and objacc dot annual revenue if it is greater than 15,000. Now what should happen if the number of employees, okay, if the number of employees is equal to null and annual revenue is greater than 15,000, if it is not populated, which means it is null, and if the annual revenue is 15,000, what should happen? Number of employees should be updated as 15. Okay, fine. Let us do that. Objacc dot number of employees equal to 15. So now what did I write here? I just said that if, okay, double equal to, if number of employees are blank and annual revenue is greater than 50,000, number of employees should be populated as 15. And the requirement itself is telling that it should happen only at the time of insertion, due to which I wrote it as before insert. Number of employees is null and annual revenue is greater than 15,000, only then we have to update number of employees as 15. Okay, fine. I'll just create a new account to observe if it is working as expected or not. So there is a field called revenue, annual revenue. Yes, I need to give some value greater than 15,000. So I'll say 16,000. And number of employees, is it the field number of employees? Yeah. Okay, this is the field number of employees, and this is currently holding blank value. I'm not populating this with anything, and I'm just clicking on save. And if I save the record, I see that this field got populated with 15. This is a very pretty basic straightforward scenario. I have a condition and I have some action to happen. Okay, fine. Let us look into the other scenario. To throw an error, if number of employees is less than 50 for billing city dollars. Okay, so an error should be thrown if at all the account record is having billing city as dollars and number of employees are less than 50. Okay, fine. Now to throw in if number of employees is less than for billing city dollars. So again for account ACC trigger dot new. Then number of employees is less than 50 for billing city dollars. So first let us have the requirement for billing city. If billing city equal to dollars and number of employees are less than 50, ACC dot number of employees are less than 50, number of employees are less than 50, then what should happen? Immediately we have to throw an error, ACC dot add error. I'm just trying to put it something like this. Okay, it got saved. Now for making it clear, what I will do is I will remove this condition. As part of the requirement it is needed, but to understand the example why I'm taking this, I'm just putting up something like this. Okay, so if at all annual revenue is greater than 15,000, immediately number of employees will become 15, no matter what you enter. No matter what you enter, if the annual revenue is greater than 15,000, number of employees will become 15. And there is one more trigger stating that if billing city is dollars and number of employees is less than 50, number of employees less than 50, error is coming up. Okay, let us quickly verify that. So what I will do is I will choose something over here, and first let me test this if it is working or not. I will give annual revenue with some greater value, and then I will give number of employees as 50, 500. Okay, I'm just trying to click on save now. Even though I have entered 500, my code overrode the value stating that it should be 15. Okay, fine. This is working as expected. Now let us come here. If billing city is dollars and number of employees are less than 50, then an error should come. Okay, fine. Let us test this as well now. Now I am clicking on new. I'm giving something. What is it? Account billing city should be dollars. Okay. Billing city, I am specifying it as dollars. Number of employees are less than 50. So number of employees, I am giving it as 10 for now. And I am clicking on save. Okay, number of employees less than city for billing city. Okay, even this trigger also worked absolutely fine for me. Now what I will do is for the same record, now I want you to answer me. I am trying to give the value as 60. And also I am trying to specify the value as 16,000 here or 60,000 here. Now will this trigger fire, and now what will happen? Will the record be saved or will the record be not saved? Read this again. If you see here, if annual revenue is greater than this, then I'm immediately making the value as 15. And as part of this, if number of employees is less than 50 and billing city is dollars, and I'm throwing an error. So these two are actually conflicting with each other. If you see, now what if user is trying to insert an account with the number of employees as 50? User is trying to enter a value something like this. Okay, fine. And the user gave annual revenue as 1 lakh. And the same user specified billing city as dollars. The user specified billing city as dollars. Now you tell me which trigger will fire first. Will this trigger fire first or will this trigger fire first? Now you can ask me, what difference does it actually make? What difference does it actually make? Should it will it really impact anything? Yes, it will impact anything. Now listen carefully, you will understand why is it needed to have control on the order of execution of triggers as well. First thing, let's go with an assumption that this got fired first. Okay, this got fired first, and what will it do? Number of employees on account to be updated as 15 if annual revenue is greater than 50,000. Okay, see, if you see annual revenue is greater than 15,000, so what will happen? The number of employees will be updated to 15. I'm going with an assumption that my first trigger got fired first, one and then two. First trigger got fired first and then it went for the second trigger. Now as my first trigger got fired, what did my first trigger do? My first trigger modified the value from 70 to 15. Then my second trigger came into picture. What is my second trigger doing? Second trigger is actually trying to check what is the billing city. Okay, billing city is dollars. Okay, my if condition was met. Then what should I do here? If billing city is dollars and number of employees are less than 50, then what should I do? I should throw an error. So if I go into this specific route, I will get an error because the billing city is dollars and number of employees is 15, due to which I'm getting an error. Now, what is the guarantee that this will execute first and why not this? Okay, yes, there is no guarantee. Now let's look at the other way around. Second trigger got executed first and then it came into the first trigger. Now when the second trigger is getting executed, what is the number of employees here? Number of employees is 70 only because second trigger is getting executed first. When the second trigger is getting executed first, I have number of employees as 70 and billing city as dollars, due to which the if condition is not met and error did not come up. Then it went to the first trigger. What is the first trigger doing? My first trigger is actually allowing my value to be set as 15. Now will it throw an error this time? No, it will not throw an error this time because the logic for which error should be thrown has been executed already and it did not find any scenario for an error to occur, due to which an erroneous record has been entered into the system. Just because we do not have control over the order of execution in triggers, we are getting an error. For both of the scenarios, you might save a record with these values. At one time you might get an error and at other time you might not see an error at all. It could be intermittent, which is very bad, due to which we always recommend to have only one trigger per object. If you have two triggers only, then you are getting this confusion. Then why do you want two triggers? Have only one trigger per object. Okay, then if I have only one trigger, then how should I do it? Means you'll be just having something like this. You decide which one should be done first. You decide because it's your requirement. You decide which one should be done first. Okay, my requirement states that first this should happen. Once this is done, only then this should happen. Okay, fine. Then put your logic in the same way. In this way, you are eliminating the purpose of some unnecessary erroneous records from entering into the system. If you see here, you are giving valid values, but just because your triggers are written incorrectly, you are allowing some erroneous record to be entering into the system. But when you have control over the order of execution, then that will not happen. But do you have control over the order of execution for triggers? No, we do not have. Then how can we ensure that we are having control? Means by writing all the code in a single trigger. Okay, now let us try to write every code in a single trigger. Now what is the requirement? If billing city is dollars and number of employees is less than 50, then I need to throw an error. What should I also do? In the same trigger, I will put my condition, which is speaking about this. I kept this same. Now what happened? If you see, first the system will try to update and then at the end some erroneous logic, if there is something present, that will be checked. Okay, let me update it with the corresponding names. In this way, I am trying to eliminate the need of some unnecessary records from entering into the system. Now this trigger is no longer needed. I can just completely deactivate this trigger or delete this trigger. I don't even need this trigger anymore. Now this trigger is doing the entire job for me. Now you can tell me, yes, Aditya, I understand, because the requirement is very simple and straightforward. You just wrote one single trigger. Now, what if my requirement is about insert and also about update? Now, what should I do? My requirement is something which is complex. Then what should I do? If I put everything in a single trigger, the number of lines are going for 800 or 1000 lines. That is difficult for me to even read. Readability is becoming an issue for me. Okay, fine. At that point of time, you need to understand the concept of trigger handler. Then comes the concept of trigger handler. Okay, what is this trigger handler? Trigger handler is nothing but a Apex class where you can write your logic. Now you can tell me. There was a time where you told me that there is something called as event centric and there is something called as user centric. Event centric means that gets executed automatically when the corresponding event happens, and user centric means user has to execute it explicitly. Apex class is user centric, Apex trigger is event centric. Now you are telling me to put the logic in Apex class. Now why will this get executed when a corresponding event happens? Means at this time what we will be doing is, from your trigger you will be calling a method that is present in your Apex class. From your trigger you are making a call to your Apex class. As you're calling something present in an Apex class, it is still user centric, it is still holding its native properties, it is still holding its native properties. So what are we trying to do here? Rather than putting our logic inside a trigger, we are just moving our logic from trigger to a corresponding Apex class. I will just show the example of how to move this logic into an Apex class. So I'm creating a new Apex class here, account handler. I can just give any name I want. It's not that I have to specify handler. I can give any name I want, and I'm saying account handler. Now, first let us understand what is a class. As part of the OOPS, you must be familiar that classes and objects are something which we use. But I just wanted to take some time to make you aware of what a class is all about and how can we write a class. Class is combination of members and methods. Members are nothing but the variables. We have been dealing with variables for quite a long time. We must be familiar with what a variable is all about. We have seen strings, we have seen collection of strings, we have seen S objects, we have seen abstract data types. So we are quite familiar with what a variable is all about. Now let us understand what is a method and how can we make use of a method. Okay. For you to write a method, always think that there are some prerequisites or there are some things that you have to think about before writing a method. And basically what is a method? Method is nothing but a block which holds some statements, that's it, which holds some instructions. Basically you're just telling to the system to do something, and for doing something you're just specifying your instructions in one block, and that block is nothing but a method. Okay, what is the is there any syntax for writing a method? Yes, there is a syntax. What is the syntax? First, specify a access specifier or access modifier. What is access modifier? Access modifier is nothing but public, private, protected. We have few access modifiers that will speak about the encapsulation, which is one of the feature in OOPS. I don't want to speak about that much, but access modifier speaks about the encapsulation. If you're unsure on what it is about, I feel that OOPS are to be still revisited. Then access modifier. And then return type. Is your method giving you anything back, or your method just doing something? If your method is giving you something back, then what is it giving you? Is it giving you a string, or is it giving you an integer, or is it giving you a record, or is it giving you a list of record, or is it giving you list of record? What is it giving you? Specify the data type of whatever it is returning. Specify the data type of whatever it is returning. So first specify the access modifier, and then specify what is the data type of something which your method is returning to you, and then the method name. Okay, fine. Then are we done here? No, there is still one more thing. Then put the parenthesis. Is your method receiving something or not? If your method is receiving something, okay, what is it receiving? What is the data type of it? Okay, specify the data type, and then give one name for your variable. Which means if someone has to call this specific method, they have to send something to this specific variable of this data type. Only then this method will get executed. Now you can ask me, do I have to remember all this, or this is a prerequisite for me? Means no, not everything is a prerequisite. There are few prerequisites and few are optional. Now let us understand which one is optional and which one is mandatory. Access modifier is not a prerequisite. If you do not specify the access modifier, immediately the system will take it as private. You do not
Aditya, we can't able to hear you. Hello. Yeah, Aditya, we can't hear you. Aditya, we can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I think it muted me. I don't know, but I'm not able to unmute myself, due to which I think you are able to hear me now, right?
Yeah, you are audible.
Your other ID is disconnected and that is reconnected now.
Oh, okay. I don't know because I suddenly I heard a message stating that host muted you, and since then I'm not able to unmute myself. Okay, fine.
Aditya,
So what I'm trying to
explain
tell here is,
Aditya, can you
yes, I
explain
will.
methods from start?
Sure. I will. Okay. So when we speak about a method is nothing but a block that will hold some specific set of instructions. You will be specifying that this is what should happen, this should happen. And if you enclose your specific instructions in one block, that block is nothing but a method. While writing a method, we have some syntax to be followed. For the system to understand that this is a method, you have to specify a few things. What are they? First thing is you need to specify the access modifier. What is the access modifier? Access modifier will specify, okay, to which region is this method available, to which region, till which region is this method available. That is what access modifier is. The valid values are, we can have public, private, global, protected, and there are these are the access modifier values that are available to you. This will be coming under the concept of encapsulation inside oops concept. Second thing, data type of returning. If your method is returning you something back, what is it returning you? What is the data type of the value that the method is returning back? If you have anything, then specify the data type. If you feel that your method will not return anything back, my method will just do the job but it will not return anything back, means then just say void. If your method is having anything that is returning, then specify the data type. If you feel that your method will not return anything back, means then just say void. Access modifier is optional. If you do not specify access modifier, then the default access modifier is taken as private. The default access modifier is taken as private. If you feel that it should not be private, then you have to explicitly specify what should be your default access modifier. What should be your access modifier? If you say public only, then it will be considered as public. If you do not say public, it will take it as private. Then method name is completely user defined, so you can write whatever method name you want. And then, is your method taking anything? For the method to process something, is it actually taking anything? If it is taking anything, what is the data type, and what is the name that you want to give to the variable that has to receive something? So this is the syntax that has to be taken in order to write a method. Now I will just take a very simple example and I will show you how a method actually works. Now I want to write one method, say void print something. A very basic method I'm writing. I'm just saying system.debug hello. System.debug hello. I just wrote a method because I know that void has to be written, and then I have to write the method name, and then I'm just trying to put some logic inside it. Okay. Now, how can I call this method? You have to call this method either from an aura component, or from a trigger, or from a visual force page, or you can call this even from anonymous block. For my example, I am referring to anonymous block here. For my example, I am referring to anonymous block here. So how can you call a method? Remember that be it a method or be it a member present inside a class, you cannot access it directly. You cannot access a class or a method that is present inside a class directly. How can you do that? For doing that, you need to create instance of your class and then initialize it. So ACC is equal to new. You have to initialize it, like how we have been doing for all the abstract data types we have shown so far. How did we do for S object? How did we do for list of S object? In the same way, remember that you have to initialize it. Whenever you are making use of a dot operator, whatever is there before this dot, make sure that it is initialized. Else you will get attempt to dereference a null object. Then you can say print something. You can say just print something. Now what will happen? The logic written inside this method will get executed. But let me tell you, this will throw us an error now. It is telling that method is not visible. Why is the method not visible? Because we have not specified the access modifier. And if you do not specify the access modifier, the default access modifier is private. Private means this method can be accessed only within the class. But as you are trying to access this method outside the class, it is not telling you that this method can be accessed. And so which we are getting an error. So for this, we'll try to make it as public void print something. Now let us try to see this. Now when I try to click on execute, yes, this execution happened successfully for me. Now if you see, I also have written a system.debug. These system.debugs can be kept inside any trigger at any place we want. Now you can click on debug only and you can see this happening. Okay, fine. Now let us try to look into it again. Now I have something called as integer I. Now I want to specify the value for integer I. So again, acc.I is equal to 10. And here what I will do is I will try to print the value for I as well. Now when I click on execute, it is telling me that I is not visible. Why is I not visible? Again, the concept of access modifier. If you do not specify an access modifier, it won't be available. For it to make available, you need to specify the access modifier as public. Now what am I trying to do here? I'm just trying to make I value as 10 and I am trying to print it. Now I am clicking on execute. Now when I click on debug only, yes, I am seeing it as hello and then followed by the variable name, whatever I have. Now what I want to do is I want to call this method, and this method, rather than me telling something like this, I want this to be like this only. I want integer to be I only, but I want to manipulate the value of I. I want I to be private only, but I want to manipulate the value of I. So how can I do that? Means what you can do is integer value, and then you can tell that whatever value I receive, that will be assigned to this specific variable. So rather than we directly trying to manipulate this variable, what are we trying to do? We are calling a method, and that method is manipulating the value that this variable is holding. How are we trying to do it? By making this method parameterized. To this method we are sending one parameter, because the syntax tells us the same. If you want to send something, you need to specify the data type and then provide a variable name. Okay, fine. I specified a data type and then I have provided a variable name with whatever value I'm trying to send, that will be assigned to this corresponding variable. Though this method is private, I am trying to manipulate the value that is present in this variable by making use of a method which is public. Now let us see how to call this method. Now if I say execute, it will, okay, I have not saved my class yet. Let me save my class. Now if I come here and if I, let me close these many. Okay, now if I click on execute, it is telling me that method does not exist or incorrect signature, which means that there is no such method by name print something which does not accept any parameters. You are trying to call a method which does not have any parameters, but there is none found, due to which I cannot call anything. Okay, now you have to tell to the system that, okay, I want this method to be called, means then you have to follow the syntax that this method is having. Okay, what is it having? For this method to get called, you need to pass an integer value. Okay, fine, let me pass some integer value. Just say 10, that's it. We should say 10. Then what will happen? This 10 will be assigned to this value variable, and then this value will be assigned to the I, and then that will be printed. Let us click on execute and see. If you see, hello 10 came up. So what did we try to do here? We try to manipulate a private variable by making use of a public method which is accessing the private variable. This is what we actually try to perform here. Now let us understand few more things. Now I want this method to return me something back. I want this method to return me something back. Okay, what do you want this method to return you back? Means I want this method to return me back an integer, or let us take integer. I want this method to return me back an integer. If you send me a number, I will return you 10 times of that number. I will return you 10 times of that number. So I will just say I is equal to value into 10, and I will say return I. I will say return I. Now if you see here what we are trying to do, we have one method, but this method will not just do the job for me. This method will also return me something. Rather than doing the job whatever I have given, it is returning me something back. Okay, what is it returning you back? Whatever number you send, to that number it will try to multiply it by 10, and after multiplying it will return you the result. It will try to return you the result after multiplying by 10. Okay, fine. Now this method is returning you an integer, right? So what should you do? As this method is returning you an integer, you need to have one more variable created for you. Because this method is returning you an integer, you are having one variable to hold the value that this method is actually sending you back. And then when you say system.debug I, you will be seeing something called as 100, because when you are sending 10, what is it trying to do? It is trying to multiply 10 with 10, and it is sending you 100 back. Now I will tell you few references. We have something called as, we worked on this. If you remember, day D is equal to system.today. What is it doing? System is a class, today is a method. What is this today method doing? Today is a method which is returning you a date. Today is a method which is returning you a date, due to which you are creating a date variable over here, and whatever this method is returning to you, you are assigning it. This is no less than this line. If you compare both of these lines, both of them are almost same in the approach. This method is returning something, and that is being stored here. This method is returning something, and that is being stored here. Now let me tell you one more method. String dot boolean b is equal to string dot is not blank. Hello. So what will this do? There is a class by name string, and in that class I have a method by name is not blank. What is this is not blank doing? Is not blank is returning you a boolean. It is a method which returns you something of type boolean, due to which you have it. But is it a default method? No, it is not a default method. It is accepting a parameter. So if you see, this and this are almost same, no difference at all. This and this are almost same. Now let us understand one more point here. We have an instance created. By using the instance, you're calling a method, and by using the instance, you're also able to manipulate the values provided that they are accessible. Now, how will this help me for triggers? Means from triggers, you will be passing the trigger context variables to the classes, because trigger.new is available only inside a trigger. But for this trigger.new to be sent to Apex class, you have to understand the concept of parameter passing. If you pass the parameter to Apex class, only then you can make use of trigger.new, else they will not work. Now, there is one more concept here by name static. There is a keyword called static. Okay, what is this keyword? This keyword can be used for members, and this keyword can also be used for methods. This keyword can be used for methods, and this keyword can also be used for members. Okay, what is the advantage of by static? What is the usage of static means? If you see here, whenever you create an instance, now think like this: opportunity OPP is equal to new opportunity. In the same way, I have something called as opportunity OPP1. Both of us know that, I mean, everyone know that OPP is different, OPP1 is different. For OPP.stage name, if I say OPP1.stage name qualification, I can give entirely different. Now when I say print OPP, I will see prospecting. When I say print OPP1, I will see qualification. Though both of them are of same type, the values that these instances are holding are entirely different. Though both of them are of same type, the values that these variables are holding different types. The values are of different. The values are entirely different here. In the same way, Now, if you feel like, no, I do not want to make use of instance, I want to make use of something that is directly binded with the class. I do not want to make use of the instance. I want to make use of something that is directly binded with the class. Wait, what is the error? Okay, I want to make use of something that is directly binded with the class means then you can make use of static. The advantage of static over non-static is if you want to make use of something which is non-static, the stage name is different for OPP and stage name is different for OPP1. But whereas if it is static, no matter how many instances you create, the value will be same. Okay, I will take one example now. Public static integer I, public integer j. Now for this account handler, I'm creating one instance. INS is equal to new account handler. Now what am I trying to do? INS.j is equal to 10. In the same way, I will create one more instance. INS1, INS1.j is equal to 10. Okay, absolutely fine. Now what I will do, I will say for this account handler, I want to give the value as account handler dot I is equal to 15. No matter how many instances you create, no matter how many manipulations you make, the value for I will always be 15. But the value for j will be dependent based on the instance that it is making use of. If you see, if a non-static variable is used, the non-static variable value is dependent on the instance from where it is being accessed. But whereas static variable value is dependent on the class but not on the instance. You will understand when we should go for static in the next example. But for now, remember that if the method is either static or if the variable is either static, you can directly say class name dot variable name, class name dot method name. But if it is a non-static variable or a non-static method, you have to make use of instance. Only if you make use of instance, it will work. Okay. For now, what I will do is I will create one method. I will create one method stating public void because I don't have to return anything. I'm just telling public void account manipulation, something like this. And what is the context variables that I have over here that are to be sent to the handler? I'm just using list of trigger.new, which is list of account only. So fine, I can just say list of account lstacc. And then what I will do, I will just blindly move this logic from here to here. I just blindly move the logic from here to here. And I know that trigger.new is not available for me. I know this trigger.new is not available for me. So as trigger.new is not available, I will be making use of lstacc over here. And from my trigger, what I will be doing, I will be calling this method present in this class. Okay, now I'm coming here, new account handler dot manipulation. Okay, let me put it in a different way so that you can understand. So first let me create instance for this class. CLS handler is equal to, and then CSS handler dot print something. No, account manipulation, not print something. And then I am passing trigger.new. So what did I do here? From my trigger, I am just calling my handler method. I have one method written and that is being called. Now if you have n number of methods, yes, you can call them. If you have n number of classes written and from n number of classes you have n number of methods, you can still call them. So this is how we are trying to eliminate lots and lots of lines of code from being written into the trigger. How are you eliminating? By moving that logic into a corresponding Apex class by creating one method and calling that method from the trigger. In this way, eliminating. And if you feel that I have to send trigger.old map also means, then have it something like this: map of id comma account map old acc. And from here you can pass trigger.old map as well. Okay, This is fine. I took a very basic example, so it will be very easy. But when you try to merge all the triggers that you have written so far, it will be kind of difficult. Now, let me tell you the drawback with this approach. Yes, this approach works absolutely fine. You can have very less number of lines in your trigger. But then the problem is there is a concept called recursive trigger. There is a concept called recursive trigger. So let us understand what is this recursive trigger all about. When we speak about recursion, we need to understand recursion is nothing but calling again and again. Recursion is nothing but calling again and again. If the same method is getting called again and again, we call it recursion. It is something similar to iteration. When you look at the order of execution, I will open the order of execution from Salesforce, maybe, and also look at this. We are trying to save, and then we know that after triggers are getting executed. That is what we understood so far. Before triggers, save, after triggers. But the catch here is all the after triggers are executed, assignment rules, auto response rules, and then workflow rules are also executed. Okay, fine. You have written workflow rule also. Once the workflow rules are executed, if you see, before triggers and after triggers will get executed again, which means I'm not tracking every event centric component here. So first system validation rules will get executed. Once system validation rules are done, before triggers, then custom validation rules, then save of record, then after triggers will get executed. After this workflow rule will get executed. And if at all this workflow rule is actually doing any manipulation, if at all this workflow rule is doing any field update, then before trigger and after trigger will fire again. Before trigger and after trigger are actually firing multiple times in a single transaction. Though you have written them only once, they're actually firing multiple times. Now you can ask me, why are they firing? What is the advantage? Or what am I losing if they do not fire? Okay. You have written a validation rule on account. You have written a validation rule on account stating that if at all the annual revenue is blank, if annual revenue is blank, throw an error. You have written a validation rule like this. And you also have written a workflow rule stating that if billing city is Dallas, annual revenue is blank. If billing city is Dallas, make annual revenue is blank. You have written a validation rule to throw an error, and you have written a workflow rule to do something. Now, as a user, I am trying to insert a record by name Google, and for this Google, I have given annual revenue as 15,000, and then I am also giving billing city as Dallas. As per my order of execution, system validation rule, custom validation rule, before trigger, save, before trigger and then custom validation rule. Before trigger, custom validation rule, save, after trigger, workflow rule. Now what will happen? My system validation rules came, okay, mandatory rules are filled. Before triggers came, I have not done anything in before trigger, so eliminated. Custom validation rules came, okay, my validation rule is checking. Is the annual revenue blank? No, annual revenue is not blank. So fine, custom validation rule part done, record got saved. After triggers came into picture, then workflow rule got executed. Now what is this workflow trying to do? Workflow is actually trying to make this field as blank. Now this record will be computed into the database with a blank value. Though you have a validation rule in place to throw an error, your workflow is getting executed after the validation rule. Just because your workflow is getting executed after the validation rule, you are not having any control over it. You cannot say, okay, validation rule, fire again because my workflow updated the record. No, you cannot do it. Just because you cannot do it, you're allowing the system to enter a record with erroneous data into the system. But now imagine the same example. You are trying to do this by using a before trigger. You are trying to do this by using a before trigger. Okay, system validation rule first came into picture. Now before triggers came into picture. Now this before trigger is checking if annual revenue is blank, throw an error. Okay, yes, annual revenue is not blank because user has entered a value for annual revenue, so it is not blank. I won't throw an error. There are no custom validation rules, so ignore. Now workflow rule came into picture. Workflow updated a field. But now, because workflow updated a field, my before trigger and after trigger will fire again. Now, because my workflow is updating a field, my before trigger got fired, and because my before trigger got fired again, now it is again checking. Now, workflow rule actually made this to blank. and then my before trigger is again firing. As my before trigger is again firing, it will throw an error. So if you are making use of before trigger, there are many advantages over validation rule. Just because validation rule cannot get executed after a workflow rule, there is a chance for some record with erroneous data to be entered into the system. But when you put it in before triggers, there is no such chance. You are ensuring that no matter what, if there is a validation rule written in your before trigger, that will be executed all the time, ensuring that erroneous data can never be present in the system. So that is why triggers are the most powerful and dynamic event centric components that can be actually leveraged. Custom validation rule can also do the job for you, but still there are some edge case scenarios where it might break. But when you speak about before trigger, no, it will not do that. Okay, fine. Now let us take one scenario. We understood the concept of order of execution. Now let us take one scenario. Now I have my after trigger to update the self record, or maybe let us take an example, not this. Okay, let's take the same example. I have my after trigger to update the self record, and I have my workflow rule to update the self record. So to make it easy, what we can do is on the opportunity, I have not written my concrete if conditions. I'm a very bad developer. I have not written any proper if conditions. So what I said was, whenever an opportunity record is updated, just say opportunity dot description is equal to account dot description. This is what I wrote the logic as. I have written my logic and I have my update statement as well. This is what I wrote in my trigger. And my workflow rule, what is it actually trying to do is workflow type is equal to new customer. This is what my workflow rule is actually trying to do. Okay, fine. Now user is trying to update a record. There are no is changed conditions in either workflow rule or in after trigger. There are no is changed conditions at all. If you are saving a record, immediately both will fire. Now what will happen? System validation rules will came into picture. Then before triggers came into picture, nothing happened. Custom validation rules came. Then record save happened. Then after trigger came into picture. Okay, fine. After trigger tried to do something. Yes, after trigger tried to do something. Then workflow rule came into picture. Because workflow rule came into picture, now what will happen? Again, update happened. Because update happened, again my triggers are firing. Trigger fire happens. Because trigger fire happens, again the process is repeating. Again workflow rule. Again trigger. Again workflow rule. If you see, trigger is leading the workflow rule to fire and workflow rule is leading the trigger to fire. Or if you feel that this doesn't sound realistic, why will someone write a code without proper if conditions at all? This scenario doesn't even sound realistic to me. I will write each change in my trigger, or I will have my workflow conditions very concrete. Why will this happen? Okay, fine. Let's not take this scenario, but remember that this is one scenario. There is one more scenario which we all should accept upon, that you have written a trigger on account object to update the opportunity. And at the same time, you have one trigger written on opportunity to update account. Now, don't you think that this will lead to an infinite loop? Your opportunity trigger is firing and is updating the account. Your update trigger is firing and is updating the opportunity. So if you see, it is an infinite loop. This trigger is causing this to happen. This trigger is causing this to happen. Now this has to be, break it somewhere. How can we break it? Okay, fine. For breaking it, there is one way. You can say that, okay, if my trigger has been executed already, then do not execute it again. So for this, what I will do is I will just create one variable, public boolean bool first time is equal to true. I'm just telling to my system that, okay, if it is first time, then do it. Now I'm telling if CLS handler dot first time equal to true. If CLS handler dot first time equal to true, then execute this logic. And then what you should do immediately, make it as false. Also make it as false immediately. So that what will happen next time when my trigger fires, obviously the value will be false, due to which I am completely safe. This is what we will think. This is how the code is written. Yes, this works absolutely fine. You are telling that this value is true. Then what are you telling? If it is true, execute it. And then immediately make it as false, so that next time when my trigger comes into picture, because this if condition will not be satisfied, my trigger will not get executed. This is what we can think. But now I will tell you the problem. Account trigger got executed and it went for updating the opportunity. Because the DML is happening on the opportunity trigger fires. Okay. And then the opportunity did something and it went into the account. Now this time my account trigger should not fire. Now what happened? My account trigger came into picture and it came down and it is saying that I am trying to initialize it. This is nothing but a new instance for me. If you remember, I told you that INS is different, INS1 is different. Now this time as you have something like this is like a new instance for me. As this is a new instance, what is the value now? The value is true. As the value is true, what will happen? Again the execution will happen. So this will not help me. So in order to avoid such scenarios, what you should do is you need to have it as static. If you keep it as static, then you're not dependent on the instance. As you're not dependent on the instance, the value will be retained, and you can say something like this. Now if you see here, you are not at all dependent on the instance. No matter how many instances are created for this specific transaction, the account handler first time value will be true only for the very first time, and once it goes inside the if block, you are immediately making it false. So this is the approach that we have to follow in order to avoid recursion inside triggers. In interviews, people will be asking questions stating that how can you avoid recursion inside triggers? The answer should be, we will be having a static variable that will determine if the trigger should get executed or not. And why static and why not a non-static variable means, if it is a non-static variable, you have to rely on the instance, and the instance will be initialized. As the instance initialization happens, you are losing the value, and for the value to be retained, the only option that is available for us is to make use of static. What I personally feel is, always have static variables created for each and every scenario possible. If you have static variable, then you can ensure that recursion can never happen. You never know from which source recursion can happen. It can happen from a trigger on a different object. It can happen because of a process builder on the same object. It can happen from a workflow on the same object. You never know. You can be sure about the code that you're writing, but you cannot guarantee about the code, or you cannot be sure about the approach that your team members are following. So anything can happen, and that can really break the code of your trigger. So due to which, always remember to ensure that you are making use of one static variable, just to be double sure that your code is not getting executed multiple times. In this way, you're ensuring, or you're conveying to the system that, okay, my code should be executed only once. How? By making use of a static variable. Why static variable and why not a non-static variable? Because non-static variable value will be lost the moment you try to do the initialization. The moment you create instance and initialize it, the value is gone. Immediately the value is gone, due to which it is recommended to make use of a static variable. As we are going into these classes, let me tell you one more point in this class. We have something called as with sharing and without sharing while speaking about an Apex class. Okay, what is with sharing and what is without sharing? In Salesforce, we have the module of security. When we speak about security, the process is organization level security will be first coming into picture. Username and password. Recently, Salesforce came up with something called as MFA, multi-factor authentication. That is to ensure that you are the person and your accounts are not compromised. You will understand MFA maybe when you work in real time. For now, that is not our topic. Organization level security ensures that user is following proper protocols in order to enter into the system. He has entered proper username, proper password, and then if at all needed, if verification codes are to be sent, that will be taken care by Salesforce. Organization level security will be checked. Once that is done, user is logged in. Then we have object level security, we have field level security, and we have record level security. We also have something called as row level security. In your profile, if you do not have view all permission, having said that OWD is private, you will not be able to view all the records that are present in your system. You will not be able to view all the records that are present in your system if your profile is not allowing you to view them. So which means there is some concept of security, but let me tell you, if you write any logic in Apex, that will be executed in the context of an admin. If you write a logic in Apex, that will be executed in the context of admin. Though you do not have access to your record, if you query for it, you will be seeing that record. Even though you do not have access to that record, if you query for that record, you will be seeing the value for that record. Then this is incorrect. Why is Apex running in admin mode means, that is what the native nature of Apex is. If you feel that you do not want your Apex code to be executed in an admin mode, You want your Apex code to be executed in the user mode, means whichever user logged in, take his permission, take his profiles, take the sharing rules into effect, means then you have to tell that, okay, I want this class to get executed in share by taking sharing rules into consideration. I want my class to get executed by taking sharing rules into consideration. You have to specify something called as with sharing. If you do not specify anything, system will blindly assume that immediately we have to look for immediately the code will be executed in admin mode. Okay, fine. Next thing, if I do not specify anything, then class will be executed in admin mode is what you told. If I specify something like this, then it will be executed in user mode. And do I have anything any other value, means yes, we also have some other value by name without sharing. If you say without sharing, then again the class will be executed in admin mode. So let me write it down. With sharing, user mode. Without sharing, system mode or admin mode. Few people call it as system mode and few people call it as admin mode. Not specified, system mode. Then why do I explicitly have to say without sharing? If I do not specify anything, then that is enough for me, right? Why do I have to explicitly specify without sharing? Is there any reason that I have to use without sharing? Means remember, if you do not specify anything, system mode is not the right answer. This is incorrect answer. I have seen out of 10 developers, 9 developers will give me an answer stating that if you do not specify anything, it will be executed in admin mode. That is a complete wrong answer. If you do not specify anything, the mode will be determined based on the source of invocation. Based on the source of invocation. Now think like this. You have a class. We have a class in with sharing mode, public with sharing class, and then class name. You have some class like this. And you have one more class, public class, class name 1. In this class, you have one method. So I'm just saying public void method 1. And here you have one method, public void method. If you are trying to call this specific method, you are trying to call this specific method which is present in this class. You have one class something like this, and you have one more class something like this. You are trying to call method 1 from here. For this class name 1, no sharing model was specified. For this class, no sharing model was specified. As nothing was specified, what will happen? It will try to take its parent sharing model. From where is this method 1 getting called? This method 1 is getting called from this class called CLS name. Okay, what is the sharing model for CLS name? This is with sharing. As this is being called from CLS name, immediately with sharing will be coming into picture, and this class runs in user mode. Now think like this. Now I have a trigger, public trigger, account on account, trigger on account. I'm just using before insert for now as an example. And then what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to call this method by passing trigger.new, or maybe I'm not passing anything, but I'm just calling this. If I do this, then this will be executed in admin mode, because triggers run in admin mode. And this is being called from something which is being executed in admin mode, it will execute in admin mode. But if the same class is being called from here, it will execute in user mode. So if you see, if you do not specify anything, in which sharing mode is it getting executed? It is getting executed based on the sharing mode of the source of invocation. If the source of invocation is happening in with sharing, okay, then with sharing will be in context. If the parent is not running in with sharing, then I will execute in admin mode. So not specified means it doesn't mean that user mode. It will be dependent on the way from where it is being invoked. If it is being invoked from a component which is running in sharing mode, then sharing mode will be taken into consideration. If it is invoked from a component for which sharing mode is not taken into consideration, then it will be executed in admin mode. Now, if you feel that no matter what, from where this is invoked, this should always be executed in admin mode only. If you feel that no matter from where this is called, I want this to be executed in admin mode, means then explicitly specify without sharing. Now, if method 1 is being called from this class, this will still execute in admin mode only. If this is called from trigger, this will still execute in admin mode only, because you have explicitly specified something due to which it will not think about its parent at all. From wherever you call me, My class is in without sharing, so I will execute in without sharing. That's it. I am least bothered about the source of invocation. I will always execute in admin mode because that is what is specified for me. But if you say with sharing, now from no matter where you call, even if you call it from a trigger, it will run in with sharing only. Even if you call it from a class where it is without sharing, it will run in with sharing only. If you specify something, then that will be blindly taken into consideration. If you do not specify anything, then the source of invocation will be taken into consideration to determine which kind of sharing setting should be applied while executing your logic. This is something which is very important. I cannot show you some scenarios because I do not have users created in my org. But the thing that you have to remember is, while writing your code, always make sure on the requirement that if your code should be running in admin mode or it should be running in the corresponding user context. If you feel that your logic should be executed in the corresponding user context, ensure to make use of with sharing. If you feel that your logic should be executed in without sharing, make sure to put as without sharing. Or if you feel that this can be executed from the place where it is being invoked means, then do not specify anything. But do not answer stating that, if you do not specify anything, then I will execute in admin mode. That is incorrect. If you do not specify anything, parents mode of sharing will be taken into consideration to determine the sharing setting of this specific class. So this is how you will be writing handlers. Now you can ask me, how many handlers should we write, or how many classes should we write? There is no such restriction. No one will tell you that there should be a trigger handler for sure. Even if you write your logic in trigger, it will work. If you move it into a trigger handler and if you call the trigger handler from trigger, even that will also work. There is no Bible stating that this is how you have to write, only then it will work. So there is no such thing. Now, what is the best practice that has to be followed means, there are many frameworks given by Salesforce, and also few people came up with their own frameworks. You decide which framework suits for your specific requirement. I personally feel that, this is my opinion again, everyone will be having their own ways. I personally feel that there should be only one trigger per object, and from this trigger you need to call trigger handler, and from this trigger handler you can have one more class called trigger helper, and again you can have something called as util. I feel this is the layer which is much better for my project requirements. For the current client that I'm working for, this is the implementation we follow, and this works absolutely fine for us because we follow that no class should hold more than 150 lines of code. If it is holding more than 150, then we'll immediately move to helper. Even if helper is holding more than 150, then we will see, is there any reusable code which can be available for other objects as well? Then we'll be having one class by name util, and we will move the logic into util, and this util can be invoked from any trigger handler from any object. So this is how we are following this as a framework. There are many frameworks given by many people. If you see, few people follow different framework. See, they have a trigger and they have trigger handler and they have different logics written. Everyone will have different approaches. There is no such super approach, or this is the approach that anyone should follow. Even Trailhead is suggesting few frameworks, but it doesn't mean that this is the framework which everyone should follow. You can go to the GitHub repository to understand the corresponding frameworks. Few people will follow extension of an abstract classes, few people will follow implementing of some interfaces, and few people will not follow anything. But the blind rule is, even if you do not want to follow anything, make sure that you're writing only one trigger per object. If you have multiple triggers per object, then you will end up in a situation where some intermittent errors will occur for the data that you're trying to enter into the system. If you feel that I'm very confused about this, okay, fine, then have only one trigger. But write every logic in your trigger. If you feel that it is confusing, okay, then move some parts of your trigger logic into trigger handler and call trigger handler from your trigger. If you feel the trigger handler is holding a lot of code, move some logic into trigger helper and call trigger helper from your trigger handler. So this is how anyone will take a call while writing a trigger. There is no blind rule stating that this is how it should be written. These are all suggestions from different people based on their own specific needs. Few people came up with different approaches stating that there is something called as trigger factory as well. So there are different frameworks out there. You can really look into those different factories and frameworks to decide which suits your requirement more. This is something which I am following. I'm not recommending that this will work for everyone, but for my requirements, this works absolutely fine. So in the same way, anyone can decide which one is much suited for their specific purpose, but this is not a prerequisite for writing a trigger or for implementing something. Even if you put the entire logic in trigger, that will still work. This is more from the perspective of reusability and readability. This is for that. Okay, with that, it's a wrap, and let's go into some questions now. Can you explain util one more time? So util is more like a class that will be holding some generic code. Now let's say that you have a requirement stating that you wanted to get today's date. Not today's date is not a good way. You wanted to check if today's date is a business day or not. You want to check if today's date, or if you want to see if today's date is Sunday or not. You can write that method in one util class, and that method can be called from helper whenever needed, and that can be called from opportunity helper, that can be called from account helper, or that can be called from any other object helper. So util is a class that will be holding more of a generic code that can be used for different scenarios. So that is what util means. It is not tagged with the trigger or with the trigger handler. If you feel some code can be reused or can be generic enough, you can put that in util. How does sharing or without sharing has to do with profile? Yeah, because in your profile, think like this. You do not have UL permission on an account object. You do not have UL permission, and on the security level, like on the OWD for account is set to private, and you do not have UL, which means you can view only the records for which you are the owner, or some records for which that are explicitly shared with you. Only those are the records that will be available to you if you try to log in. Now when you try to write a SQL query stating that select id comma name from account, then that will get you all the account records that are present in the system if your code is running in without sharing context. So due to which profile will be taken into consideration, not the profile, the security or the sharing rules will be taken into considerations while executing your Apex code. If you want your sharing rules to be bypassed, go for without sharing. If you feel that no, they ought to be taken into consideration, explicitly mention it as public with sharing. I think source of invocation is like an inherited sharing. Yes, kind of that. Yes. Right. Can you please explain the usage of public static final? Okay. Final, I will take it at the end. I will see. Is there any shortcut way to recollect for which trigger event we should use which context variable? I mean, if something new is coming, trigger.new. If you feel that something is going away from your system, trigger.old. That is the only way which I remember all the time. And if you want, I can share some images with you. Yesterday I have seen few trigger context variables. See, maybe this image can tell you for which event which image is available. I'm putting this over here. What security enforced keyword? Security enforced keyword came up kind of recently. Security enforced was not present earlier. Now we got security enforced keyword. By using security enforced keyword, even if your code when you use security enforced keyword, only the records for which you have access will be shared with you. Now think in a different scenario. Okay, now when I have security enforced, then why do I have without sharing, or why I have with sharing? I can just use security enforced and I can just go with this, right? Okay, now let me tell you. If you use security enforced, that is available only for SOQL query, correct? Security enforced is available only for SOQL queries. Now think about a scenario where you're actually trying to do some DML, and you're not allowed to do the DML. You do not have access to do the DML on that specific object. Now can with security enforced help you? No. With security enforced is only for SOQL query to take security into consideration. But you are doing a DML inside your class for which the user is not having access to. At that point of time, again, you have to go for public with sharing only. Could you please explain why we have trigger.new for before insert? Because after insert only we will get to know the new record. After insert, you will get to know the record ID. Trigger.new will not hold ID. Trigger.new map will hold the ID. If you just do one thing, create a new trigger in before insert and just say system.debug trigger.new, you will not see the ID. Now again for the same trigger, make it as after insert and give system.debug trigger.new. Then you will see the ID. So if you use trigger.new in before context, ID will be not present. If you use trigger.new in after context, ID will be present because record got saved. Can you put this image in chat box? Okay, I'll bring the group here. Order of execution. Order of execution. See, order of execution, it is, I mean, that itself will take one entire topic, but at a high level, I will show you how order of execution actually behaves. If you see here, this is how the actual order of execution happens. So these are the components that get executed all the time. This is how it actually works. Once you're trying to load a specific record or you're trying to perform some DML on the record, first system validation rules will be coming into picture. Then before trigger, custom validation rules, then save happens, then the after triggers. And again, if you see, if there is some update happening, it is again going back and doing some other job here. If you see, but there is no custom validation rules in place, due to which when you try to update a field by using workflow rule, that will not be caught, that will not be catched by a validation rule. So that is the drawback. And when you try to do it by using a before trigger, as you have before trigger getting executed even after the update, you are still on the safe side over there. Any other questions? Can we assign task using trigger and can send email as well? Yes, we can do that. I think for assigning task, okay, let us think like this. You are trying to create a new record for a task object, and we know how to create a record. Task, instance, initialization, instance dot field name, so on so values, and then do the DML. That's it. So that is how we are actually creating a task. Then for sending an email, we have a class by name messaging dot single email message. Salesforce created this specific class for us, and in this class there are some predefined methods. By using those methods, you will be actually sending an email. If you see here, this is the logic that has to be used in order to send an email. You can tell to whom should the email be sent. You can specify the email addresses as well, and you can tell what is the subject, what is the body, and then if you execute this, then the email will be sent. This is the logic that has to be used in order to send out an email, like how we did for posting something in the chatter. In the same way, for sending an email, we have some logic given by Salesforce itself. You just have to leverage the existing classes that were already written by Salesforce in order to send an email. You don't have to write your own class. Can we get this trigger notes file? Yeah, I'll share this. I'll share this. Thank you. For example, if Apex class permission has there for a parent object and not have any permission on child class, is that possible to insert a child record? If the Apex class permission is there for a parent object, okay, there is an Apex class. Lokesh, could you please elaborate your question? Apex class permission for parent object means I did not get that. Do you mean to say user is trying to execute an Apex class and the user is having permission for parent object? Classes do not have permissions on objects. It's the users who will be having permissions on objects. Okay, so there is a user who is trying to call an Apex class and he's having access to do something on the parent object and he's not having something to do on the child object. Is it possible to insert a child record? If your class is running in with sharing, then no, it cannot be done because he is trying to do DML on a child record for which he has no access to. But if your class is running in without sharing mode, then yes, you will be able to do it. In next lecture, will you provide an example to send an email through Apex? I don't have such plan, but maybe if needed, yes, I can do that. How does sharing with or without sharing has to do with profile? I just answered that. Okay, if your profile is not having access on a specific object and in your class, if you're trying to do something on that object, if your class is in with sharing, then that logic will not work. But if your class is in without sharing, only then the logic will work.